Lord Mandelson is semi-undressed. The woman he's speaking to, unknown. The latest pictures released by the US Justice Department over the weekend are embarrassing and uncomfortable. But among the millions of documents made public, more evidence suggesting an even closer relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson. Bank statements from 2003, which appear to show $75,000 of payments to an account of which Peter Mandelson, then an MP, was a beneficiary. An email from 2009, when Lord Mandelson was business secretary, appears to show Epstein asking for advice on how to lobby the British government on reducing taxes on bankers' bonuses. Treasury digging in, but I'm on the case, replies Lord Mandelson. An email from 2010 appears to give Jeffrey Epstein advance notice of a £500 billion EU bailout of the euro. Are you home? Asks Epstein. Just leaving number 10. Will call, replies Lord Mandelson. Peter Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party on Sunday and last night said he had no recollection of receiving payments from Epstein. Less than a year ago, Keir Starmer appeared delighted with his newly appointed US ambassador. The government insists it wasn't aware of just how close Lord Mandelson was to Jeffrey Epstein, but opposition leaders have questions.
Why was it that Keir Starmer, despite knowing the allegations surrounding Peter Mandelson, insisted on making him the British ambassador, waving away processes which were in place? That's what we want to see a full investigation into.
Another document contains what looks like a private memo for then Prime Minister Gordon Brown, with highly sensitive economic policy plans, described as an interesting note by Lord Mandelson as he forwarded it to Epstein. Gordon Brown has asked for an investigation into what his then business secretary may have shared with Epstein. Keir Starmer has ordered a review and wants Lord Mandelson stripped of his peerage.
The Prime Minister is calling on all political parties, including the Conservatives as the largest party in the House of Lords, to work with the government to modernise the disciplinary procedures to allow for removal of peers who have brought the House of Lords into disrepute.
But many Labour MPs want to see even tougher action.
We need to establish whether or not whether he should be in the House of Lords, of course he shouldn't be in the House of Lords, but should he be being prosecuted? Should they at the very least look at whether or not he's committed offences? Because on the face of it, it does seem to me that he has.
Peter Mandelson has always insisted he knew nothing of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, but his friendship with the convicted paedophile leaves his political career ending in disgrace.
And Harry is here to talk about all this. Look, Harry, with Peter Mandelson, the accusations are about inappropriate contact with other people. It's different things. I guess the connecting theme is the public, I think, just feel no one ever gets held to account about this. Is anyone actually ever going to be forced to answer any real questions about it?
Well, I think the first thing to say is there were so many of these documents released over the weekend. You can't rule out, as people go through this stuff, more things emerging. And I think it's also extraordinary that it's still less than a year that Lord Mandelson arrived in Washington as US ambassador. And at that time, there were plenty of people who said to Keir Starmer, look, you're taking a real risk here because this guy's had to resign from government twice before. Tonight, there are even more questions about the Prime Minister's judgment. And for him, he thought that this was a problem he'd sort of dealt with. And now it's resurfaced and looks like it's going to drag on a bit longer. For Lord Mandelson, this is not just about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein anymore. It's about that allegation that he shared financially sensitive government information when he was a cabinet minister. And when you look at these emails, it's quite shocking just how many times he appears to have forwarded stuff on to Jeffrey Epstein, sometimes within minutes of receiving an email on his government account, we assume, it's forwarded on to Jeffrey Epstein, someone who could benefit from this. And the consequences of that are potentially quite serious. Now, ITV News has tried to contact Lord Mandelson today. He hasn't responded. He has spoken to the Times newspaper, where he said he doesn't think he's got anything to say to the US Congress if he's asked to testify there. But there were plenty of Labour MPs in Parliament today who say Lord Mandelson has got questions to answer and who also believe the government has got questions to answer as well.
OK, Harry, thank you very much indeed. Excuse me. Now, Then there is Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. He and now his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson are also in the spotlight from the latest revelations. He has denied and continues to deny any wrongdoing, yet despite the furore of him being stripped of his royal titles and told to move out of his Windsor home, he continues to reside there. Today he was seen going out for a horse ride. It was revealed meanwhile that his former wife took her daughters to see the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein just after he had been released from prison for sex trafficking a minor.
He might have been in the news headlines for 3 days, but Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor clearly had somewhere he needed to be today and decided staying at home was not for him. That appointment was for a horse ride here on the Windsor estate, which, remember, is Crown Estate land he was asked to move out of by the King. Andrew chose to ride past a spot where photographers regularly stand. It gave off vibes of, I don't care if you see me or not. A brazen decision, you might think, given the release of these images of the then Prince Andrew kneeling over an unidentified woman, date and context unknown, but among the 3 million documents made public. It is why even the Prime Minister has repeated his call for Andrew to share what he knows with those investigating Epstein's crimes, something Epstein's victims would also welcome.
So many questions and no answers from him, just dead silence. He could help to rebuild his shredded reputation if he would just go in and be happy to answer any questions.
Talking of questions, there are many piling up for Andrew's ex-wife, now known as Sarah Ferguson. Emails between a Sarah and Jeffrey Epstein show plans to visit him with her 2 daughters in July 2009. It'll be myself, Beatrice and Eugenie, Sarah wrote. The date of their stay, 5 days. Yes, 5 days after Epstein had been released from prison for sex offences with an underage girl.
I think we've seen previously that Sarah Ferguson's judgment has many flaws in it and lots of lapses. And it's clear by these continuation of emails to Jeffrey Epstein that she's not really thinking properly.
1 year after that stay, an email from a Sarah calls Epstein a legend and writes of, "My love, gratitude for your generosity and kindness, kiss, kiss." Sarah signs off, "I am at your service, just marry me." And then a bizarre email in September 2011. At 6:18 a.m, Sarah says she's heard from the Duke that you have had a baby boy, and she sends Epstein her love, friendship and congratulations. It is the first anyone has heard of a child of Jeffrey Epstein, and if true, where is that boy now? He'd be 14. Does he even know who his father is? So many questions. Being in these emails, of course, does not suggest any wrongdoing. Andrew has repeatedly denied the allegations made against him. He was happy to be seen today. The palace, however, will have had other views.
And Chris is here to talk about all this. Look, I think we all know that the King and William have never really been big fans of Andrew. They have done a lot, let's concede that. But you know, after he paid millions of pounds to a woman he's never met, he was still in the royal fold, albeit that he's been stripped of his titles. He is still in a royal house. I mean, what happens next? What can they do? What should they do?
Well, look, we don't know. Let's be clear. What questions the royal family asked Andrew, for all these years, and what answers he gave, if any, in return. I mean, there is a view that Queen Elizabeth could have done more about her second son and didn't. She was obviously getting of an age where perhaps she couldn't quite master the gravity was what was happening. I suppose I would say this though, Tom. Think about what today would have been like for the royal family had the King not done what he did in December, which was take away the Prince title, take away the Duke of York title, get rid of his house. But the very fact that Andrew decided today to go out on his horse and cloppity past all those photographers on what is Crown land. Still, because he hasn't moved out of his house yet, it did kind of feel like he was rubbing his brother's nose in it a little bit. And when I asked a palace source earlier, when is he going to move out of this house in Royal Lodge, the answer was soon. I get the impression they kind of meant not soon enough. So, there's still much more to go. And you just wonder about the thinking process that went on, but, not just the horse thing today, but let's talk about Sarah Ferguson, my report. What thinking led her to take her girls to stay at Epstein's house 5 days after he's released from prison? You know, there's so many questions over such a long period of time, and that's why it leaves all the people in these positions of influence, you know, facing so many questions tonight.
As you say, so many questions, so few answers. That could really sum up this scandal from the beginning. Now, the names of a number of other prominent people have emerged in the huge tranche of Epstein files released in the United States. As lawyers have been very quick to point out, the mere presence of a name does not of itself imply any wrongdoing. Nonetheless, it is perhaps not a comfortable place to be. And Sejal is here to look at who else is in the files. Sejal.
Tom, these files name some of the most powerful men on the planet, offering fresh insight into their relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. From tech titans to global influencers, from controversial presidents to British billionaires. Among them, Virgin Group founder Sir Richard Branson. Newly released emails show a number of messages exchanged between him and Epstein. In one message, Sir Richard appears to tell Epstein it was really nice seeing him, adding, "Any time you're in the area, would love to see you, as long as you bring your harem." Virgin Group says the term harem referred to 3 adult women who worked for Epstein, and harem was a phrase used by Epstein himself. It says any contact with him was many years ago and was limited to group or business settings such as charity events. Also appearing repeatedly in the files, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates. His name features more than 2,500 times. In one email written to himself, Epstein alleges he helped Bill Gates obtain drugs to treat a sexually transmitted disease, claiming the medication was intended to be given secretly to Mr. Gates's wife. He writes, helping Bill to get drugs in order to deal with consequences of sex with Russian girls, to facilitating his illicit trysts with married women. The Gates Foundation has strongly denied the claim, saying these claims from a proven disgruntled liar are absolutely absurd and completely false. The files also include messages appearing to link Epstein to President Putin, with more than 1,000 references to Putin and nearly 10,000 mentioning Moscow. But there's no concrete evidence of his involvement in formal Russian intelligence operations. There are also multiple emails between Elon Musk and Epstein, including discussions about travelling to Epstein's private island, with one proposed trip in 2012, in which Mr. Musk asks what day or night will be the wildest party on your island. Responding now, Mr. Musk says Epstein hounded him to visit, but that he always declined. Appearing in these documents alone does not suggest wrongdoing. What they underline is how far Epstein's reach extended.
Sergio, thank you very much indeed. Of course, at the centre of all this are the victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's actions, many of whom are still awaiting their day of justice. And Dan joins us now to talk about all this. I mean, Dan, I think I'm right in saying we haven't had all the files or anything like it. And, you know, really one can't even begin to say that the survivors have had justice. Are we ever going to get more answers?
Well, the Democrats are saying, in fact, that the Department of Justice has released only about half of the files they hold, and that there is much more to come out. They've been alleging in very clear terms that this is nothing short of a White House cover-up. Certainly, there are plenty of mentions of Donald Trump, about 5,000 or so, but so far, no incriminating photos or videos of him. And he has maintained, and the White House has maintained, he cut off all relations. He had no idea about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities, and that he is hiding nothing. In the last few minutes, the president has finally been asked about this in the Oval Office. Here's what he had to say about his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. And in fact, if you look at the DOJ, they announced, they released 3 million pages. It's like this is all they're supposed to be doing. And frankly, the DOJ, I think, should just say, we have other things to do, because that whole thing has turned out, I mean, other than Bill Clinton and, Bill Gates and lots of people there are a lot of questions about it, but nothing on me.
Survivors we've spoken to are still pushing for transparency, particularly for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Peter Mandelson at the British end of this scandal. Here's what they're telling us.
I think that they should absolutely testify to Congress. This is an investigation. It's not finished. There are a lot of allegations out there. And if you have nothing to hide, why not come out and say you have nothing to hide?
Another line, Tom, is that on Wednesday, a judge is going to hear from survivors' lawyers who are claiming that unredacted photos of victims, of survivors, were accidentally uploaded by the Department of Justice, which has been described by one lawyer for survivors as the most egregious violation of victim privacy in US history.
OK, Dan, thank you very much indeed.